Thank you very much for having me today. So often when we talk about the energy transition in Africa or around the global south, we reduce it to just having a light bulb in the house or very small energy needs. That's nice, but that's not what will power Africa. When we talk about a fair and just energy transition for Africa, we're talking about industrializing Africa and pulling her out of poverty and in so many ways building forward better. No country in the world has developed without energy, and Africa will be no different. Africa has some unique opportunities. I mean, this is a transition, but building on what necessarily is not undoing much. It's just adjusting the mix and ensuring that nobody is left behind. It's a fascinating place. Youth are a large majority of our population. The average age of Africa today is 19 years old. So they're definitely driving the innovations around the transition, and they will continue to do that for a long time to come. But when we look at energy demand in Africa, it is real. 40% of ICT is energy. 25% of agriculture is energy. And this one is really important because when you consider the amount of post-harvest losses we suffer in Africa because of lack of cold storage or other opportunities for better storage, that is significant. And I also want to mention the gendered nature of agriculture, because 80% of food consumed in non-industrialized countries is produced by small-scale farmers, and 70% of them are women. And so energy is about women as well. 30% of education, and today because of the COVID pandemic, we know how important it is that we are connected to be able to have our children educated. 30% of that here is energy. And more than 2/3 of people are without access to energy in the world today, and most of them live certainly in sub-Saharan Africa. 2/3 of those without electricity today. We know that electrification in Africa is relatively low. It remains low compared to other parts of the world. The 95% rate reached on average across developing countries is mainly in Asia, and lack of electricity often ensures and pushes households and small business and communities to inefficient, polluting, and expensive alternatives. So to be able to really transform Africa, which must be our agenda, we have got to invest in energy. And in the coming years, we know that Africa will overtake China and India in terms of total population. And this large increase will be a major force driving energy's demand in Africa. So we have got to make sure that the mix of energy, which is largely, fortunately, investing heavily in renewables, is taking advantage of the full opportunity that Africa's energy opportunities present. Now, hydropower will remain a cornerstone of sub-Saharan Africa's power system, especially in DRC and Ethiopia and Mozambique, where we have significant power generation, almost expected to triple by 2040. We also hope to see more regional cooperation and integration of power networks that will be really important in ensuring that we share and we collaborate around energy grids. But I want to talk about one other area that I think is really important when we talk about justice and fairness and access for everybody. And this is the role of nature in driving energy. When we invest in nature, we're actually investing in our own self-preservation. And energy, especially hydroelectricity, as I've mentioned, will continue to be a really important part of Africa's energy mix. And therefore, also investing in nature will matter more than ever before. But there's so many things that we can do to ensure that we protect and reduce waste, we restore landscapes, and we produce in a way that ensures the integrity of nature, because that will be a major driving force in securing our hydro security. I want to mention 4 things. There's an emerging paradigm that I really love that is coming up more and more around what we need to do to sustain nature. We need to produce better, especially in the agricultural sector. We have 25% of global emissions coming from agriculture, but agriculture also presenting some of the most opportunities for unlocking rural prosperity on the continent. So we've got to invest in agriculture, and it is energy consuming. And we have to also invest in the inputs that go into agriculture so that we're not increasing levels of nitrous oxide, for example, and pushing emissions further up, even as Africa develops a more intense and productive agricultural system. So that's produce. We also have to protect our tropical forests. Far away, they are by far the most important ecosystems in mitigating climate change, and especially as we increase our demand for energy and emissions increase, and really for Africa, marginal increases are expected, even if we triple our energy demand. A lot of this will sit on the integrity of the Amazon, of the Congo Basin, the Amazon, and the forests of Southeast Asia. But for Africa, certainly the Amazon, which at the moment is still one of the most healthy ecosystems around. I hope it stays that way, but we have to continue to ensure that it functions as a healthy carbon sink so that we can continue to benefit from the services. Reduce, we have to close the food gap. We lose way too much food in waste, and we have to shift and ensure that we produce and our children are consuming healthy protein and other plant-based proteins so that their diets continue to improve. About 45% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from products that are used in manufacturing. So we also have to work, and food production. So we also have to work around the circular economy, even as we improve and increase our food production. The restoration of landscapes, I mentioned, really important if we're going to maintain the sort of ecosystem integrity that's required to sustain a growing and fast industrializing African continent. So that's produce, protect, restore, and reduce. We really don't have much of a choice. The continent today is at a crossing point. The COVID pandemic has really rendered and exposed the vulnerabilities we face. And building resilience in Africa is going to also be about building prosperity. And the more we can build prosperity for everyone that is just and fair, the more people will be able to withstand the shocks that will come. We know they're coming, but that is where a just and fair energy transition comes in, and certainly climate justice will have to be at the center of this discussion. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you so much, Wanjira, for that clarifying insight in the energy situation in Africa, but also putting it all into context. Now, there's been a lot of questions running into the Q&A during your presentation. And the first one is about decreasing poverty. You know, getting rid of poverty leads to an increase in energy need. Renewable energy is expensive and has a low energy efficiency. How can we meet the increasing need with affordable energy?
Well, that is absolutely right. And thank you very much for the opportunity to join you. This is the big issue. Energy will be at the center of eliminating poverty and building a prosperous Africa, which is really the center of all of this. And so we have to look at all options on the table. We have to look at the energy opportunities that Africa has and that Africa has currently invested in but could invest in the future. But significant in this is climate finance. It is going to be exceedingly cost intensive to invest. Africa requires an investment just around this energy issue of $70 billion a year to be able to invest in the sort of energy transition that's required. So finance, really, really important. And this is something that is certainly at the center of climate debates. So absolutely right. I couldn't agree more.
Finance is key here, of course, but where should those finances come from? Who should invest
I
in
think
this? Yeah.
very good question. I think there are a lot of sources of finance. I think we are seeing national governments themselves committing and investing significant resources in their own energy transitions, in their own growth and prosperity. But we also have the multilateral system that has made significant commitments to developing countries, for example. We have, for example, the Paris Agreement that required $100 billion a year to be between 2020 and 2025. And we're not seeing the flows of finance. We're not seeing promises kept with respect to the multilateral agreements. That has to be kept. What we are seeing is countries really putting significant investments of their own in the energy transition.
And we're going to discuss bits and pieces of what you just talked about later on. But I have another question that is, we could probably elaborate more during the discussion, but I will mention it now anyway. What are the main barriers to widespread introduction of renewables in your region? Technical, economical, or political? And you've talked about the economical side of it, but are there also technical and political issues to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. There are. We have all the above, I would say. There are issues of policy and regulation. There are significant issues that need to ensure that we send the right signals for private sector investment to put the investments in clean and renewable energies. We have to create job opportunities. So we've got to demonstrate that these are about providing jobs. And of course, governments will have to ensure that policy regulations identify opportunities and threats, and then elaborate some of the mechanisms that will promote justice at the same time. We also need to invest, I think, in local populations, right? We have a situation where the job opportunities that renewables presents is really significant. We've seen these numbers before. I think it's $100 million invested in renewables would create 25 jobs. This needs to be done so that it invests in local populations. The other thing that, and we've seen, there was a report recently from Power for All, I think, that showed that we're seeing direct decentralizing renewables and identifying opportunities in renewables is really creating direct full-time jobs in countries like Kenya and Nigeria. So this is actually happening. So we need to focus this, especially now with the economic recovery opportunities. The ownership of energy is another area where I think there are real opportunities. We've seen decentralized renewable energy solutions, off-grid solutions that are powering Africa, especially in rural areas, and also allowing for youth engagement in the sector. So that's important. We mentioned the finance issue, a huge one. We need to invest and direct finances because the investment required for energy, for the transition, or for investing in the sort of energy supply that's needed to meet the demand, quite significant. And then, of course, multi-stakeholder engagement. We need everybody. We need governments. We need businesses. We need all the staff, everybody involved. Just a few.
Yeah, we could probably discuss this for hours and hours, Wanjira, and we are going to get into a panel discussion later on. But for now, I would have to say thank you so far, and I hope that we can bring in the gender perspective as well during the panel discussion. So please help me to remember that for the panel discussion. There are actually questions regarding that as well. So thank you so far, Wanjira, and looking forward to seeing you again in just some minutes. Yes.